So this is really a time of transition for a lot of people, a lot of athletes, high school, college level, people in general. When you talk about sports, people are ending their careers. You know, at the high school level, they may never play the game again if you don't get a scholarship. Right. Even if you do play at that next level, you may never play at the professional level. There's also pro athletes that, you know, they played, and although they're physically capable, they just are contemplating retirement. So brought up a question between me and Chris about, you know, just our experiences in life, not just sports, but relationships. What do you do or what happens when you just don't love it anymore? And that could be anything. So I really just wanted to open the floor up and ask you, Chris, have there been times in your life in sports and relationships where you just kind of contemplated that you didn't love it anymore? Yeah. What was that like?
Man, there's been a lot of moments, honestly, where I just had a passion for something, a joy that I got from something, and over time, it just kind of started to drift away. And like you said, that is across the board. That's with sports, with football specifically, with hobbies that I've had in the past, and honestly, even with jobs, relationships as well. And I think for me, the time when I really realized that I didn't love football anymore specifically wasn't when it really had nothing to do with the games. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like anyone who's played a game at a high level, they knew that they could get themselves up for the big moments. Yeah. Or even if you were someone who, you know, is a musical artist, I'm sure that they can find a way to get up for the concert, like the big moment that you've been kind of doing all your work for. But it was in the times like when I realized, man, I may not love this anymore, was when I started to fall out of love with the process. Yeah. That's honestly what I believe true greatness comes from, is loving the process day in, day out. And when I dreaded going to practice every day, man, I think that's when something clicked in me, like, okay, like, should I continue going down this path, or is there something different I should be doing? So it's a hard thing to come to grips with, though. It's almost like a breakup in a relationship, bro. Like, you just
with the only woman you've ever been
right,
with, right?
Exactly, man. It's kind of crazy, but I almost felt like I had been in that relationship and I was putting in so much love for this person, the game, so to speak, but I wasn't sure if it loved me back. Yep. So it's a hard thing to come to grips with, bro. Like, do you feel like you can relate to that?
Yeah, I can. And it's really a saying in the league. I'm sure you heard it, and it says, like, we love the game, but the game don't love nobody.
That's right.
And, you know, I think that's kind of more directed towards injuries. You know, injuries happen. Everybody come in the game, you know, with this dream that they're going to play 10, 12 years, but then you start getting injured. Right. One injury kind of makes you a regular dude, right? Like pedestrian. And so for me, that's kind of what happened with me. I started getting injuries and, you know, a pec here, I hurt my neck and this and that. And, you know, the process of having to go through that every day, you can't manufacture that. You can't manufacture that love for the game. So no matter when it comes, and when it creeps in, it's there. Yeah. Right? It's there. So I got injured one year, was able to take a year off, and I was like, maybe I just needed this year off. Mm-hmm. Came back, and it was still there. I still felt that. Yeah. And the weird thing is, like, what I've noticed now is a lot of guys keep playing even when they don't love the game, because they don't know what's next, or the fear of what's next. Yeah. Or they just don't really want to face that they, you know, I got to get out of this and go to something else.
Bro, let me ask you, that great point. Like, injuries, I feel like that's kind of the common thread for a lot of people where they kind of come to grips. Would you say poor performance, like not hitting your potential or what you would expect of yourself, or injuries would have the biggest impact on someone's love for the game? That was my first question. And the second one was, do you feel like you, at any point, held on too long? Like, do you feel like mentally you were checked out and you were willing to just keep going because, like you said, you had a little bit of that fear of what's next? Did you ever feel that way? So that's two questions I had for you.
First question, I think, you know, whether it's poor performance or injuries, I think usually it's injury. I think if you've been able to make it to that level of, you know, Division I football and college football in general, or NFL football, like your poor performances, you're not gonna stay there. Like you're gonna do the work to make sure your performances are great because that's what got you, right? That competitive drive. But it's when you're not capable of giving that because like your body is just failing you. That is that's the thing that messes with people mentally. And I think I've dealt with that. Whether it was feeling like I couldn't really open my hips or whatever it is, I couldn't run fast enough, and it kind of like. The process, like you talked about, the process of having to get ready every day for practice.
Right.
So I think that was probably more to factor into that. Guys don't love the game because they can't play how they used to play.
Right. Yeah. That's real.
And then the second part of that question, I think, is just realizing that the game's gonna end for everybody, though. Really.
Oh, yeah.
The game's going to end for everybody.
Except for Tom Brady, I guess. Father Time is 0 for 4 against Tom Brady.
Before I even answer the second part of that question, did you realize that the game was ending for you?
Yeah, I did. I felt like it was almost like it was closing in on me.
Yeah.
And my confidence was starting to wane a little bit. Yeah. Like your point about injuries, bro, I felt like that was the first moment where I was like, wait a second, do I really love this game? Like, this is probably too much information, but I remember my sophomore year, going into my redshirt sophomore year, I had just come off of dislocated patella, and I had to relearn the game completely. Like, I could not play the game the same anymore. Yeah. And I remember getting put on my back multiple times, and that never, like at any point that I played football, had I ever been put on my back before, and my confidence was broken. And I remember like laying in the bed crying, like I was in a relationship, like and the girl broke up with me because I felt like I just couldn't do it or I couldn't be the same anymore. Yeah. And I felt like that was like the first inclination of like, man, this isn't gonna last forever. It could close in on you. And then you fast forward 3-4 years later, and I'm down in Miami. And I'm sitting in my locker and I'm realizing my body was falling apart. I had broken my toe again, and it was like, man, where do I go from here? Like it felt like it was all kind of a culmination of like a buildup of a lot of issues, bro. But I
don't feel like to answer that second part, I don't feel like I held on too long.
You don't? Okay.
Because I knew like I'm not a person that can fake or manufacture any of that.
Yeah.
Real quick story. I was in Chicago. This was like pretty much my last year on the field because I got injured the last year. I was in Chicago. I was in the special teams meeting. Special teams coach was going over something, and my mind just wasn't in it. And I just walked out the meeting. And I was like,
you told me that.
I walked out of the meeting, and I was like, I think I'm done. Like I can't even concentrate on this, and my mind's not in it. I'm done.
Wow.
And then I got injured that year. Came back, got injured. But like I went out on injury, but in my mind, I knew like I couldn't manufacture to get another 3-4 years out of it because I was afraid of what was coming next. Yeah. I just had to face it. And even when we talk about transitioning from football to this new life that we had to create, relationships die along with that career.
That's right.
Right, like man, all the relationships that you had on a daily basis, all the people that you thought you talked to every single day, they died. Really.
Right.
Because the things that we value change, right?
That's right.
The things that we value change, and it's weird when you out of the league or you out of football, and you still looking at people that are in football, and I know that they're just kind of on the go every day, but like it's like, dang, my life has changed so drastically, in such a short period of time. It's like I couldn't even imagine going back.
Right.
To
it. And even like this, like our relationship, I feel like is an anomaly because like you said, when your environment changes, the circumstances and relationships can die and change as well. Yeah. And it's not likely for two guys whose careers span different periods of time, but also had kind of that common thread to still have a relationship after that. Yeah. Normally, like you said, when the game dies, the relationships in the locker room dies along with it, bro. And I guess even on the other side of that, like when did you realize that you even loved the game in the first place? Like, did you ever have a moment? I know you were a basketball guy initially, and so was I. Like that was my first love, was playing basketball. Like when do you feel like you had that moment of like, I love this, I have a passion for it, this is what I want to go after? Yeah. Can you pinpoint that at all?
I can't, and I had to wrestle with this question honestly because when I finished playing, I asked myself if I truly ever loved the game in the first place.
Wow.
Or did I love, did I love being held at this position because I was good at something, because of the accolades, because of the attention.
Yeah.
So it could have been baseball, it could have been football, it could have been basketball.
Right, yeah.
It could have been, it could have been anything.
It would have been the means to the end for
exactly.
you. Wow.
And so, not saying that I don't love football. It's afforded me an amazing life, and you man, all the lessons you learn, life lessons you learn from playing it.
Facts.
But I did have to wrestle with that question, like, did I ever really love the game? Because there was a period where, like, when I was done, I didn't want nothing to do with football. I didn't want to talk about football. I didn't want to see football. And I think it's kind of that breakup thing you were talking about. Mm-hmm. But a little bit of it with me is being honest that basketball has always been my favorite sport. It always has. Football was second, really. And I think the bitterness of that breakup kind of made that gap widen.
Wow.
But it's also just, that's something we've done for so long in our lives. You want to cultivate the other parts of yourself. Yeah. And I think that's been the cool part for me. Like realizing this is ended. This part of my life is ended. Whether it's 30 years old, the next 10 years is going to look drastically different. When we turn 40, the next 10 years after that going to look totally drastically different. So I like to kind of think of it as just in increments of what we're doing at that time. It can never be your whole identity. That's when it's gone, it's gone.
Bro, we're on the same wavelength, bro. You just saying identity sparked something in me because, like, we're both followers of Jesus. We're both Christians. And, like, I became a Christian right before I got to college. And I started preaching. Like, I just kind of got thrusted into that. Like, I didn't have any theology or Bible study or anything. I didn't grow up in church, but people said, you love the Lord, you're outspoken about it, we're going to put you in the pulpit. And the things I was preaching for a decade, honestly, was your identity is in Christ. You're made in the image of God. Like, this is who you are. And I wasn't believing what I was preaching. And I didn't know it. When football ended for me, bro, I felt like a part of me died. But I didn't want to face it. I continued to run away from that part of me that I felt like I had lost. And I struggled for a while, like in a new career. I tried to run immediately away from football into the next thing. And it wasn't as successful as I wanted it to be. And everything I had done up until that point was successful. And I felt like, man, maybe I'm just not that same guy anymore. And it's hard. So I feel like most athletes, not all, but most probably kind of go through that transition phase of coming to grips with the fact that, man, you're no longer Chris, the football player. You're no longer Brandon, the Paul Horning Award winner. Like that was Brandon in 2012, Brandon in 2011, Chris in 2014, and kind of having to reinvent and understand, like you said, we're broader than just what we do. So, man, that's a great point. I feel like everybody can relate to that. They probably go through that transition.
I mean, ultimately, it's the fear of our ego, right? It's the fear of us losing, I guess, some sense of entitlement, some sense of like pride and that we're good at something. Right. Because, I mean, regardless who we are, we all want to, feel like we've accomplished something, we're good at something, we're praised, but that's ego. And obviously that has to die in order for us to move and elevate. Yeah, so, ego's the enemy. Ego's the enemy. Honestly, like, my career ending probably was the best thing for me at that time period in my life. Being like at the tail end of my 20s, really. But having to cultivate those other parts of myself, like I said, because we don't do that. But I want to ask you, like, in what way do you think relationship-wise did you have to change the most? And I'm not even just talking about football. Like, we're so wired to go do the same thing every single day, and you got to turn that on and off, right? Like, you're aggressive, you go home to the wife or girlfriend, and then you got to be Chris, the homebody. Right, like the softer stuff. So, like, did you ever struggle with that? No question. Especially when football was over, I had to realize I had become extremely selfish and self-centered. Not intentionally, but everything revolved around me. Right. My schedule, what Chris was doing. Chris was, like, everything stopped. Even honestly in high school, when it came to my family,
Like, Chris is trying to go to college. Chris is an All-American. Chris has these interviews. Chris has these coaches coming by. My parents' lives kind of revolved around that, and it bled into my relationship with my girl, and obviously into my wife over time, where everything was based off of what we did. Her schedule was based off of what I did. Yeah. And when that was over, I had to realize that other people had taken sacrifices and bits and pieces of themselves and their time to my benefit. Yeah. And I needed to learn how to, one, appreciate them for that, because they wanted to do that. They loved me, and that's why they wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. But find out how I could reciprocate it, because that was so impactful and allowing me to get to the point that I did. Like, I wouldn't have made it alone. So I think that's a great question, bro. Like, it's hard. Like, do you feel like you had some of that struggle as well?
You hit it on the head, 100%. When you can take a step back when it's done, and you think about the selflessness that your spouse had to show you in order for her to kind of give up whatever she wanted to do at that time. Follow you around. The schedule literally, like, there's no other way around. Right. It has to be centered around you for that time period. Right. And we don't realize that. We don't realize that.
Had no idea. You're like, this is just how it is.
This is how it is. It's what we got to go through. But when you step back and look at it, man, you get a whole new sense of appreciation. And that's what I said, like, once you leave the game, you can kind of see that in a bigger spectrum.
That's right.
And man, I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for that for sure. What would you tell younger Chris now about kind of the topic of what we're saying when you don't love it anymore? Was there anything you do differently?
Man, I would tell my younger self, Chris, 19, 20 years old, crying in the bed, I would tell him to don't grow weary and persevere, one, because the next 3 years were the greatest 3 years of my life, to be honest. Like, I got married to Ariel, had the most athletic success I had ever had, the most exposure, excitement, built the greatest friendships that I have for the rest of my life. And if I would have let that moment on that bed be the transition and turning point of me turning away, I would have regretted it for the rest of my life. So I would say stand firm and persevere. But also I would tell myself it's not about myself. So often I think I forget that in current day. I forget that God can use any and everybody to do any and everything for his glory. Yep. I'm not special. Like, God has made me uniquely for the moment and position I'm in, but he could literally rise up like a pile of rocks and do the exact same thing that I was able to do. So just to persevere, and the other thing would be to not take myself too seriously and recognize it's not about me. Yeah. What would you say, one answer to that question as well? I would love to get your perspective of what you would tell 19, 20, 25-year-old even Brandon, and how you would transition. Or also, do you think there's anything you could have done to better prepare yourself for that transition phase when the game kind of went away for you?
I'll answer the second part first. I don't think there's anything I could do differently, because you don't know what you don't know, right?
That's
like,
right.
You can't prepare for what you've never experienced. So, but that kind of goes with the first part, is just to submit. I tell my younger self to submit.
Wow.
Submit to whatever God has you in, whatever that experience and that situation is at the moment. Submit to it. Like, there were plenty of times in my career where things might not been going exactly ideal or how I wanted, and I'd be complaining. Right. And I'd be, saying all type of stuff, not really realizing just how amazing and how blessed you are to be in this opportunity. That's right. To completely submit, because at the end, like, it's all being used for a reason. And not to kind of ruin my witness. There's been times I've acted out of anger because of a situation that I'm being ungrateful for. So I think all of it just kind of comes back to realizing that, like, man, all of the things we experience are put there to better us and cultivate something bigger at the end, right? Like, the death of a career is the birth and start of something else. And I think that's just kind of the reality of life in general. Good. Like, we fear losing what we have this grip on, but we never really had it in the first place,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's right, man. That's right. I have to ask you this. Like we talked about love of a game, love of relationship, whoever, and we talked a lot about like the feeling, like the emotion that comes along with it. But I feel like the definition of love is more of an action that's tied to the feeling. That that's more of a byproduct of the action that comes from it. Yeah. Do you feel like there have been times where you can share as much as you want or as little, whether it be in friendships, marriage, girlfriend relationships, where you've been like, man, I'm not feeling this, but you continue to persevere and saw it on the other end? Or would you say there were moments where you felt that way and you were like, it's probably best for me to go a different direction, whether it be breaking a friendship off or saying this probably isn't the right relationship for me long term? Do you feel like you ever had those moments at all in your life?
Yeah. In marriage and relationships, that's every week, really. Like, everything ain't gonna go sweet in your relationship, and anybody that's been married, if you persevere through, obviously it's gonna grow you as a person. It's gonna grow your relationship. But it's also going to teach you lessons about yourself and your character to grow through. Yeah. So I think you can use that analogy in anything. Like persevere and push through it. And on the other side, there's going to be intangible things that like you can't buy or you will never get if you veer off and go another way, right?
Right.
Like, somebody told me one time, like Chris and Ariel or Brandon and Tess, like if you don't cultivate or shape the things that you want in this relationship, like whoever you be or with the next time is just gonna be another test or another brand. Like
that's right.
It doesn't get better. Obviously, grass is not greener on the other side. So you have to see it through. And I think as athletes, we're taught that anyway, just by nature, to never quit.
That's right.
And so I think we're more wired to kind of go through that grind. But like that's a real thing. Yeah.
The grass ain't greener. And when your grass ain't green, go get some water and seeds and fertilizer so you can get it right. You got to get your yard together. 100%. No, that's good, man. And I feel like it just puts in perspective, like you said, like especially us as men in relationships, we are really the thermostat. We're and our spouse is typically the thermometer. Like we set the temperature. Like if we're kind, generous, selfless, loving, we're usually going to get that in response. And if we're the opposite, we're probably going to get that as well. So it's almost like a gut check time where you say, man, if my yard ain't right, it's probably because I'm neglecting it. Exactly. I'm not doing my role as the gardener to kind of cultivate what needs to be there, bro. So
it's always going to be a reflection of our internal temperature. That's real.
Yeah, I like it. Well, we hit on a lot, man. Like, you have any kind of final thoughts that you feel like you want to give on this topic?
We asked, what do you do when you just don't love it anymore? We talked about that as it pertains to sports, as it pertains to relationships. I think the answer to that is to be true to yourself, to be true to everybody around you, and I'd say persevere through it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Obviously there's times where you can't.
Right.
But what do you do when you just don't love it anymore is you see it to the end and you evaluate after that, in my opinion. If you guys, whatever your opinion is on that, please comment down below.
Yes.
Let us know what's going on and your thoughts.
Yeah, we'd love to hear y'all's thoughts around anything that you may lose love for. Yeah. Like, how did you navigate relationships that ended? How did you navigate the end of a career, a loss of a friendship, a loss of a love of a game? We'd love to hear y'all's thoughts and perspectives. But we gave our under further review take. I think Brandon gave some major nuggets, so y'all need to tweet those out for sure. I hope y'all were taking notes. But again, thank y'all for checking us out here under further review. If you're checking us out for the first time, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell. Also, we would love to get a like. And check us out. We have a new website that launched as well, underfurtherreviewpodcast.com. Get all the updates and see all the new things that we're bringing to the table. So appreciate y'all for checking us out. See y'all in the next one.